everyone, and welcome to Word on the Street, Election Edition. So, for Word on the Street, we always come together and we talk about whatever current events that's happening in the workplace, with the workforce, and I give you my take on what's going on. Well, for the Election Edition, we're bringing in people who are currently in elected positions and folks who placed their hat in the ring to say that they want to take on those elected positions to explore how they plan to lead, right? All right, gang, the next person joining us for Word on the Street Election Edition is District Attorney Mike Schmidt. I am so excited that he's joining us here today, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Cyril. Thanks
all the way over here to the Workplace Change building. Happy to have you.
Thank you.
All right, so D.A. Schmidt, okay, by the way, gang, D.A. Schmidt told me not to call him D.A. Schmidt. He said call him Mike. Michael?
Mike.
Mike. So that's what I'm doing, okay? So, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's been your career journey up until now that led you to becoming the DA of Multnomah County?
Yeah, a little bit circuitous. I started my first real job out of college was a high school teacher.
What? Oh my gosh, what grade did you teach?
9th and 10th.
And what subject?
Social studies, civics. And I was actually teaching in New Orleans, in public schools in New Orleans. It was previous to Hurricane Katrina. And it was a specialty school that focused on aviation and automotive. So for young people that thought that maybe their career path would be in those fields, they had interests. So I taught civics to them. So we talked a lot about, Wright brothers and, Henry Ford assembly lines, industrialization, a lot of like their focus area into the subject matter. And my kids, as I referred to them, got to do amazing things. They got to work up on beat up old cars, and some of them, they got to fly planes. Which some of them had never been on commercial flights in their entire lives. And then they got to land little Cessnas into the levees of New Orleans.
Okay, all right. So you're a teacher, and then you're like, you know what? I want to do law.
Yeah,
like, tell me how that happened.
Yeah, so, I thought maybe before I went teaching, I was like, maybe law school, maybe, something else. And I thought there was a lot in 2003 going on with No Child Left Behind and a lot of conversation about, is that good or not? So I thought, that's something I want to be a part of, learn more about, understand the education system. I did that for a couple years and then thought, you know what, I still want to go to law school.
Yeah.
And so I figured, you know what, I want to be an environmental environmental lawyer, because I think pollution's bad and our world is, global warming, all the things, right? And I had this very romanticized idea in my head about what an environmental lawyer does. That's a person who kayaks and backpacks and sues polluters, right?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right.
That sounds about right.
In my head.
And it's not at all what it is.
Okay.
Right? So for any young people out there who are thinking about their career paths, talk to somebody in the field before you make major life decisions.
Important.
So I did that. In the two top law schools in the country for environmental law was one in Tulane, which is in New Orleans, and Lewis and Clark here in Portland. So I'd never been to Oregon. I didn't have any family or people here, but I thought, you know what? I love the city of New Orleans, but I'm not sure I'll be a successful law student if I stay here, because I also love the food and the music and the culture. And
it is a vibe down there.
My understanding at the time of law school was it's rigorous and challenging, and so I thought, you know what? Portland looks like a beautiful place. Let me go there. And I got accepted into Lewis and Clark. Came here to be an environmental lawyer. Halfway through school, they let you take your first environmental law class.
Yeah.
That's when I realized I hate environmental law.
Right on.
So I was like, all right, got to pivot. I got an internship at the District Attorney's office as a certified law student, something we still do today.
Which district?
In Multnomah County.
Okay.
In 2007, I was a certified law student in Multnomah County. And again, we still do this today. As a law student, you are able to actually prosecute misdemeanor cases. You're in the courtroom, you're in front of juries, you get the real life experience. And the melding of that experience with my background in teaching high school in New Orleans, where my students in the public schools were mostly all black, because the school system down in New Orleans is very segregated. And what I saw with their interactions with the criminal justice system and how it impacted their lives as victims of crime, as sometimes the people being arrested as children of incarcerated parents, I really felt like I could be a person who could change the system from within.
Yeah.
And so I got into the office and that's how I got started.
I love that. I love that. So where you been from 2003 until 2024? Until 2020. What were you doing? Were you in Portland the entire time?
I was. I moved here in 2005.
Okay.
Yep, 2005. So Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans 2005. I moved here a couple weeks before that happened.
Okay.
Just fortuitous. So I wasn't a refugee from the storm, but it still, impacted a lot of my friends and family and my students. But moved here in 2005 to go to law school. Met my would-be wife in 2006. And so we've set down roots and our family's here. And now I grew up in upstate New York, and I have brought my family. My parents now live in Milwaukee, Oregon.
Okay.
My sister, I have one sibling, she lives in Portland, Oregon. So we've all moved out here. We've all fallen in love with the Pacific Northwest. And so we're all out here since then.
And you've been a practicing attorney since you graduated from Lewis and Clark.
That's correct.
And has it been in the DA's office most of the time, or where'd you go?
So I kind of had a circuitous path again. I started out in the DA's office. I started as an intern. I was hired on. I prosecuted in the DA's office from 2008 to 2013.
Okay.
So about 5 years,
5 years
of prosecution. I mainly did property crimes. Was the bulk of my work. Treatment courts, restitution for victims, things of that nature. And after I hit that kind of fifth year, and I felt like the reasons I wanted to be a prosecutor, that I got into it, I wasn't necessarily achieving my goals. Instead of me changing the system from within, I felt like the system was changing me from without. And I realized that, when you work in the office, there's an elected leader, they set the policy for what the office does. And I remember poignantly, I had a conversation. I was in front of a judge, Judge Michael Marcus, fantastic judge, one of the pioneers in our community of data-driven thinking about the criminal justice system and research. And I was standing in front of him, and a man had just been convicted of a crime. And so at that point, once there's a conviction, the judge says to the parties, prosecutor, what do you think the sentence should be? Defense attorney, what do you think the sentence should be? So he points to me and says, D.A. Schmidt, what are you asking me to do? And I said, well, Your Honor, based on this man's criminal history, he's in his 50s at this point, he continues to commit crimes. I just think that he's been in prison 6 or 7 times. We just need to send him back to prison for this many years.
Yeah.
And the judge, in one word, kind of broke me and just said, why? And it was really one of the first times that I was confronted with reflecting but yeah, why? What, and his point, what is this going to accomplish? You just said this man's been in and out of prison. That has never worked in this situation. Why do you think it's going to work this time? And I did what a lot of attorneys do. I start looking in my file as if the answer's in there somewhere, but it's not, right? And he says, okay, stop. Defense attorney, what do you think I should do with your client? And defense attorney, sensing the advantage at this point, is like, well, Your Honor, my client, he wants to do treatment. And the judge says he's failed out of treatment 12 times. So why? And the defense attorney's like, but I thought you were again, you right? But the point of the judge that I took away from that was, he was going to land somewhere, but neither of us were asking the right question.
Yeah.
How do we change the trajectory that this individual is on? We were in our corners. I was the prosecutor. I was doing my prosecutor thing. Well, you do this is the punishment, this is a sentence. I wasn't thinking to myself, what is the outcome, the resolution that I could fashion that would change this man's trajectory? And the same thing for the defense attorney. Defense attorney was thinking the same thing. This is my corner, this is what I do, I advocate for probation. And the judge was like, neither of you are asking the right questions. And I went back up into the office and I said to my boss, I said, what do I say to a judge who asked me this? Where's the research and where's the evidence that says my position's the right position? And I was very naive around this at this time. And what I was told was, shut up, you go in there and you tell the judge to do their job. And then I was like, oh, okay, there isn't research. This isn't based on what's gonna work. And for me, that was kind of a breaking point. So I left the office in 2013. I went and worked in the legislature. I was counsel for the House and Senate Judiciary Committees.
Yep.
That's where I got the policy bug. I started to understand when you're an attorney, you're learning the rules. I think of it, I like Monopoly as a board game, right? I think of it like Monopoly. You're learning what are the rules, how do I play this game? And law is a very complicated, the books of rules are very long, right? But you're learning the rules. You go to the legislature and you're like, oh, I can change the rules. The rules are not immutable.
That's right.
They are not cement. So I started working with policymakers, and I found that they were asking a lot of the right questions. They were saying, how do we make this better? How do we get better outcomes? How do we spend less taxpayer money and get better results? How do we get more efficient? And so that experience, and we passed major legislation in 2013 called Justice Reinvestment. That legislation prevented Oregon from building another prison, because we were slated at the time to, hey, our prisons are overcrowded, now we need to build another prison. Well, we all know that the state of any state, anybody's budget, you have a pie, right? And if you gotta take more of that pie for prisons, you're gonna have less of that pie for other things. Hospitals, education, like you name it. So the legislature's balancing this out, and they're saying, you know what? We'd rather not build another prison for women. Women was the fastest growing population of prison in the state of Oregon at the time. And they said, we'd rather not do that. What can we do differently? And we passed, and I wasn't a legislator, I was counsel. They passed major legislation to make investments in local communities that would give people programming opportunities, treatment and things like that, so that maybe they wouldn't have to be sent to prison because there were resources locally. And it's been wildly successful as an approach. It's been going on, it continues every single biennium. The legislature makes major investments in all the counties. And not only have we not had to build that new prison for women, the state of Oregon's been able to mothball a decrepit and old prison that they would have had to revamp and spend all the money to get that up to par.
I love that. I mean, you just talked about policy in the legislature, which makes me have to just go to Measure 110.
Sure.
Right? I mean, Measure 110 is all that people are thinking about right now. And so Measure 110, for those who don't know what it is, but I find it hard to believe that anybody doesn't know what it is, it decriminalizes drug use. I mean, simply. We passed it in 2020, and yet we are now only seeing the opening of necessary drug treatment facilities. How successful are these facilities that are just now starting to open so far in helping to curb drug decriminalization? Because that was the objective, to stop sending people to prison for being addicted to drugs, right? That was the point of Measure 110. And then people have felt like it's just kind of like exploded in the worst possible way. And now we're trying to catch up to the crisis that perhaps Measure 110 established. So facilities are opening up now. Is it working? Are the open facilities working in curbing?
Well, first and foremost, you know, I've been looking around drug policy for a long time. And I was a supporter one time, I was a supporter of the work before that when we read A New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander.
Great book.
Right, and we saw the disparity that the drug war has had on our system. I believe that we cannot allow people to be using drugs openly on our streets.
Right on.
That, I think, needs to go back, and I'm advocating and working with the legislature to make that a misdemeanor again. With that, I think the hope and the goal should still be the connection of people to treatment. It should not be the goal of incarceration or putting them in jail or anything else. We know that addiction is a health issue. It's a challenging health issue that will stay with people for their entire lives. And so the health system is what needs to kick in, but we can't allow people to be using drugs openly on our streets.
Okay.
So first and foremost, that. I was just this morning actually at the Behavioral Health Center downtown, where the Portland Police and treatment providers were teaming up and working together to get people connected to treatment. And I saw providers come into that room and they were saying, hey, this morning we have 3 beds that are open for detox right now for fentanyl. We have this resource that is available. And so they're calling this out to the police officers and the engagement, the peers that are gonna go out and do the work. And the way the model is working right now, as we speak, as we're doing this interview, is that police officers are going around, walking around doing their beat, the bike squad. They're making contact with people, having conversations. And if they have a conversation with somebody and they're gonna give them a citation for Measure 110, they say, hey, are you interested in treatment right now? And if the person says, yeah, I'm amenable to that, I'd like to learn more, they're calling someone right then, and within 10 minutes, they're gonna be a team of peer coming out to get those people in treatment.
And what if they say no?
And what if they say no? Well, at this point, if they say no, they get the citation, which is a $100 fine, and they can, call a hotline or not. But I was talking to the bike squad officers and talking to the peer, and they have great success when they have the resource to give people. The challenge for them, as you highlighted, is that we haven't had the resources in place to make that connection. So I'm seeing this connection, and it's interesting to me because, you know, Measure 110 was about not putting people in the criminal justice system getting connected to treatment. But I see some innovation going on where we got law enforcement, Portland Police, working together with peers and treatment providers to get those people access to treatment, and they're having some good success.
Is it changing crime? The volume of crime, people feel like Portland is less safe right now, right? They're directly tethering it to police not doing as much policing, because when they arrest people, so it has been said in these streets, they just get released from prison because the DA is not prosecuting these crimes, or they don't feel that they have the ability to arrest folks. And so the new beds, the new concerted effort for people to team up and work together, is it having an impact on the actual volume of crime that's happening throughout the Portland or the Multnomah County region?
So there's a few things in there I want to unpack.
Okay.
People don't, I hear this from community members, I'm talking to people, and you're absolutely right. People have real concerns about their safety right now. That's real. That's not made up. That's not fake. And we need to continue to do everything we can to work on those issues and reassure people. And just this morning, as I was driving into work, the city of Portland was holding a press conference with the new police chief, and they were talking about how in 2023, all of the crime stats are falling across the board. So it's both real that people are not feeling safe, and also that progress is being made and that we're seeing crime. And it's Portland, but it's also national. We're seeing crime rates across the country falling back to where they were pre-pandemic. So I think progress is being made, and more progress still needs to be made to work on people being safe. So that's number one. Number two, you mentioned prosecution and the feeling, and I hear this a lot, there's billboards around town that are, you know, sending this misinformation out, that people aren't being prosecuted. Well, I want to assure people in our community, people are being prosecuted. In fact, in 2023, our felony prosecution rate and our misdemeanor prosecution rate, and I'll unpack what that means, was the highest it's been since 2015 and 2016. So we're not talking about 2019 pre-pandemic. We're as high, we can only go back to 2015 in terms of data for this. And we look back to 2015 and we're seeing we're back at the highest marks that this office has had. So I think what that says to you is, one, people are being held accountable. That's important to me. And accountability, I think, is key to getting people connected to the things that they need to do to change the behavior. So people need to be held accountable. And our office, the attorneys in our office, who have weathered incredible challenges of COVID, shutting down the courthouse, backlogs, all these things, caseloads that are tremendous and huge. They've weathered those storms. We're getting all of that back under control, and we have the highest prosecution rates that we've had in basically a decade.
So what I'm trying to reconcile, I voted for you.
Thank you.
I voted for you because I have got Black children, I've got a Black husband, I got a Black brother. My father went to prison for 17 years. I've got a relationship with the criminal justice system. And the things that you were talking about really did inspire and encourage me. Now then, it became almost apocalyptic after, like, everything was on fire after you were elected. And, you know, it made me start to question some of these policies. It's like, well, can we really reduce the amount of policing or reduce the amount of convictions and prosecutions to that? Like, it was almost like a pendulum swinging, right? You're saying that the convictions are up, but you ran the first time on saying, like, we gotta, like, it shouldn't just be about convictions. I'm a nuanced person, you're a nuanced person, and I'm still trying to, because I'm like, my catalytic converter was stolen 4 times out of my Toyota Camry, right? It sounded like a monster truck, and the insurance stopped covering it twice. Police didn't respond. That stuff's gotta stop happening, right? It stops me from being able to go to work. It stops people from being able to take care of their children and their families and things of that nature. And it has a huge financial impact, right? And I also don't want everybody to go to prison. So I'm like, yeah, convict him. I'm like, no, but I don't want everybody convicted. So what is that?
Oh, you're hitting exactly the right question. And I'm sorry about your experience with catalytic converters. My mother-in-law's was stolen. It was, and I was proud that we went and worked with legislature to change the law, and we've seen that drastically go down, because now we require people to have a VIN and proof of ownership before they can sell their catalytic converter, and now we've seen those getting stolen a lot less on our streets. But your question is exactly the right question. In fact, it's kind of the question that judge was asking me with that one word, like, why? And I think where people get conflated and the nuance of it is there has to be accountability for people's actions. But accountability doesn't have to be lock them up and throw away the key.
Right.
And that's the difference. I've been privileged in my life. When I was running the state agency, the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, which was my next job after the legislature, I was the executive director of that agency. I got to go to Norway. I got to tour their prison system. I got to talk to leaders from Ireland and other Scandinavian countries about the way they approach things. Their view is all about rehabilitation.
Right.
That's it. It's in Norway, just for example, you start in the max security prison. That's where you start. Everybody starts there. But you can, if your behavior dictates and you're working on your issues, you can be stepped down to the medium security within a matter of weeks or a month.
Wow.
And then and you're assigned a person,
from level 5 to level 2 in weeks or months?
And we would call, you're assigned essentially not a peer, but you're assigned a correctional officer who is assigned a small caseload of people in the prisons to work with
while
them.
in prison.
In prison. Right now, we warehouse people in prisons, and then if they are, if there is a treatment bed available, which we have something like 300 in the state of Oregon for our 13,000 prisoners, then you might get some treatment before you hit the gate, maybe.
Wow.
So our focus in the United States has been historically, and one of the reasons we're an outlier internationally in the way we approach this is punishment.
Yes.
Punishment and accountability are different things. And accountability says you have to take accountability for your actions. And we are going to focus on making sure you never come back. And we're going to work with you to do these things. When you have a system that operates like that, the recidivism rate in Norway is about 20%. When you have a system that is focused on punishment, our system in the United States, our recidivism rate for people coming out of prison is closer to 50%.
Yeah.
So we're spending a lot more money because it's very expensive to lock people up. I just toured the Oregon State Penitentiary down in Salem a couple weeks ago. You walk in there and on the very first floor, you see all these cells that are on the first floor, and out in front of every single one of them is a wheelchair or a walker. We have one of the most geriatric prison populations in the country. And so you got to ask yourself, what public safety are we getting for that investment? And that's very expensive. All the health issues that we have to pay for and cover, so just from an efficiency in public safety, we're not getting the public safety for the investments that we're making. That's why one of the things that I've done as district attorney is we started what we call step court. And step court is focused on crimes where people are presumptively going to go to prison. That's the sentence, you go to prison. And we saw for these certain crimes that especially young black men, 25% of the people we were sending to prison for these crimes were young black men. 25% of the population of Multnomah County is not young black men.
Right.
Probably closer to 1.5%, maybe 2%.
Right. That's exactly right.
Right. So 25% of the people my office was sending to prison for those crimes were young black men. So I said, well, can't we do something different? Because I think what you have to understand is, and when I talk to community, what I hear is, and my experience based on being a teacher is that when people are removed from society, that just doesn't impact them.
Right.
That impacts their kids, that impacts their parents, that impacts their siblings, right? And so what are we setting up the community for in the future? So with the goal with this step court is, first and foremost, public safety. We have to make sure we're protecting the public. Can we assure public safety and not remove people from the community if we don't have to?
Right.
Some people, in my opinion, have to be removed from the community.
Fact.
Some people don't. And it's hard to get that right. But I'll tell you, 2 years in, over 2 years now of having this step court in place, we've had around 77 participants. About a dozen have graduated. Our recidivism rate is 8.5%. Half of the participants identify as BIPOC, as people of color.
Yeah.
So we are getting better public safety results. They are less costly to taxpayers, it's more efficient, and we are decreasing disparity in our prison system and keeping people in our community when we can safely do that.
So where can people learn about this program? Is it listed? Where is it?
Yeah. So there is a blurb on our website. You can
Yeah.
go on, and the mcda.us, the office website, talks about step court. There's been some coverage in the media.
Okay.
I think the Willamette Week wrote an article about it. Maybe a couple other outlets wrote something about it a little while ago. You know, all courts are open to the public.
Yeah.
Anybody can come in and observe. I actually observed it myself the other day with the Speaker of the House, Dan Rayfield. We sat there and we observed open court. So there are ways for people to engage.
So, I mean, I've been learning a lot about the way in which the DA's office works, right? It's pretty opaque. I think most people are just intimidated by having to go to court, and I might go to jail or be fined, or it's overwhelming. And so what I've been learning in preparation for my interviews is that you all actually, your DDAs have a lot of discretion on what to prosecute, how much time to ask for from a sentencing standpoint, whether or not to make a recommendation for some kind of, more social work or, mental health. You have a lot of authority, autonomy, creative control to send someone to prison or to not. That's your team, right? How large is your team? How large is your law firm? Because the DA's office is a law firm.
It is a law firm. It's one of the biggest law firms in the state. All staff combined, we have about 260 employees. 260
employees. So that means that, and what's their caseload per year on average?
So it depends on the level of crime.
Okay.
If you're carrying homicides, very intensive.
Yeah.
So we try to keep those caseloads in the 12 to 15 range.
Okay.
If you're carrying misdemeanors, you're carrying hundreds of cases
right on.
at any one time. So it's
hundreds of cases, but thousands of people every year. Some might say tens of thousands of people every year are impacted by the decision that your DAs make on whether to send them to prison or give them something different.
In 2023, we prosecuted about 8,400 cases.
8,400, okay, all right, not tens of thousands, 8,400, almost 10,000. We run an HR firm here, right? We're all about leadership, management, accountability, transparency. Like, you get from your workforce how you lead them, how you instruct them, how you hold them accountable, how you praise them and reward them. You get out of them what you invest into them and how you lead them. How are you leading this team to get to the outcomes that you're talking about? Because what you're preaching, I'm buying, sir, 100%. But then how do you actualize it? Because how many cases did you try this past year?
The office? Oh, the district attorney in Multnomah County does not try cases.
Exactly.
We run a law firm.
You run a law firm. So what's your job? What is, like, for
That's
people to understand, what is your job as the DA?
So in Multnomah County, like I say, we're running our budget, our fiscal year budget this year was $50 million. I have staff across 4 or 5 different sites across the county. We have the East County Courthouse, the Juvenile down on Lee Long. So I have sites all over the county.
Yep.
I have obligations at the legislature. We're very active in the legislature, working on statewide policy. I have city and county duties. So my job and the job of the Multnomah County DA for as far as I know back has been a kind of a more ministerial role of running the agency,
right,
not trying the cases.
Right.
There are small offices in the state. There's actually a few offices where the district attorney is the only prosecutor in that county, right? They're trying cases. Small offices are trying cases, but the large metro county agencies like Washington County, Clackamas County, Multnomah County, Salem, Marion County, these attorneys are typically not trying cases, they're running their offices.
So you're not responsible for trying cases, which I tell people all the time. I don't need the CFO to go and actually produce the spreadsheets that then the CEO and the rest of the executive team are reviewing. I need them to lead the sharpest and most creative CFO and compliant CFO shop humanly possible, right? So that the organization can soar. So I don't expect the DA to prosecute cases, but to lead the workforce towards the vision that they ran on, right? How are you doing that? Because again, we just talked about how complicated it is to both balance this vision with the reality of drug addiction, 110, a shrinking workforce from a policing standpoint. I think you've got some vacancies in the DA's office right now. So all of these things are real while you're trying to create change, right? And manage for change. How are you doing it?
Yeah, it was a great question. And when I was elected in 2020, The prosecuting attorneys union, they endorse my opponent. So it's even more challenging, right? You're coming in and you're saying, hey, the community, 77% of the community said,
Chose me.
this is the vision,
Right.
right? And so whenever that happens, you're going to see turnover, right? There are some people that are going to say, hey, this isn't for me, I'm going to tap out. And then there are people who stay behind and say, no, I can think about this and think about this vision. My approach, because you have to be collaborative, I see it, and I was just talking to a bunch of attorneys last night about this. I see myself in a lot of ways as my job is to improve their day-to-day lives.
Yes.
Because if their day-to-day is better, then they're doing a better job being able to serve our community. And so some of the ways that I've gone about doing that, step court as an example, that gives a prosecuting attorney another option that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
If you're a prosecuting attorney, you're like, all right, my options are jail or prison or probation.
Yep.
You're like, all right, I got to choose between one of these things. Well, now I said, well, how about step court? Well, now I'm giving them another option to do something that's meaningful in how to handle this case. So one of it is, how can we build programs that will be effective for the community, effective for taxpayers, and give my attorneys more options, more resources? The other way is I have massively grown this law firm since I've been the district attorney. When I started in 2020, I was elected like May 19th, George Floyd's murdered 6 days later, city erupts. 60 days later, the district attorney had resigned, he quit, the chief of police had resigned, and the governor's calling me and saying, I know you weren't supposed to start till January, but how about today?
Yep.
And I said, okay, governor, when the governor calls, you usually say yes.
Yep.
And so I said, okay, so we got started with that kind of backdrop. That day, my first day in office, we had 72 prosecuting attorneys. To put that in context, when I was an intern in 2007, we had near 100. So we had almost a 30% reduction in our prosecutorial workforce in that intervening 15 years. And that's not because we had lots of vacancies.
Right.
That was budget.
Okay.
All right. And so one of the things that I have set myself to in the caseloads, pandemic, there are all kinds of other external factors, but the caseloads were exploding.
Right.
That leads to turnover, right? Because people are saying this is too much.
I'm burnt out.
I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
And so I knew I had to do things to support my attorneys. As of today, we have 96 prosecuting attorneys.
Okay.
So I've increased our prosecutorial workforce by 30%. I've increased our overall 260-person agency workforce by 11.5%.
Yeah.
So one of the things, the way that I can support my people is to be an advocate for them, for the resources we need to serve our community and do our jobs well.
Yeah.
And that takes ability to be a partner, to be a collaborator. I'm able to work with the governor. I'm able to, in fact, I was just down in Salem earlier this week, testifying in front of the Criminal Justice Commission to get $100,000 for the Portland Police Bureau so that they can run more street takeover missions. I'm a collaborator, and you need somebody in the district attorney's office who has the support and the know-how to do and make those connections, because that's how you can support the staff. I'm not in there trying cases because I'm in there building the agency so that it can be successful and serve our community.
There are two areas that I want to talk about. One of them, we run an HR firm. So I've got to give you the platform and the space to talk about these gender discrimination complaints that have come forward that are very publicly accessible about the office. What's going on with it? Like, are the complaints a referendum on you? Are these things that were happening before you were there? I want to start with this. Sometimes we will see a complaint that's lodged. I run an HR firm, right? We see a complaint that's lodged, and then it gets catapulted into the media, and the media immediately places blame on whoever, wherever the statement is made, right? That there's discrimination happening, and that boss is in charge of that discrimination. It's like, that person is a bad guy. But what I know about human resources cases is that sometimes that guy's a bad guy, and then sometimes that guy, and that person, they don't get along, and this person's like, I'm going to leverage the resources available to me against you and make a stink about it. I'm not here to call, whether or not it was true or not, but I do want to give you the space to talk about what's going on inside your shop. Three claims? That's a lot.
Yeah. Obviously, for all HR reasons, we're not going to talk about the specifics.
Exactly. No names. No.
But what I do want to get out is, I did inherit this law firm, and it's run a certain way for a long time, and I'm really trying to change that. One of the things that I was able to do with partnering with the county commission is bring on our first ever equity director.
Yes.
A person whose job is to do equity work in the agency, because before that it was like the thing that some people in our agency who were really dedicated to equity work did in their spare time.
Yes.
So we professionalized that. Now we're in the process, and if anybody wants to apply to the office, of recruiting for our next equity director. In fact,
will this be your first one, or this will be a replacement?
This will be a replacement for our first one. So we had a first one. He was with us for a little bit over a year. He's continuing doing equity work in another space.
Got it.
And so now we're looking for our next equity.
There's a vacancy, gang.
So
do you have to be an attorney?
You do not have to be an attorney.
That's what I'm talking about. Send us the position description. Somebody send us the PD. We'll get it out there. Okay.
So equity is incredibly important to me. One of the things, so a lot of what you do when you take over, you're inheriting a lot of staff. I have broadened my executive team massively. So the prior district attorney, he really ran the office on the lawyer side of things, had a very small, compact team of a few lawyers at the very top who made all the decisions.
Okay.
I said, that needs to be a lot broader. I need people from every aspect of my agency on my executive team. My executive team now is, I think, about 15 people. It's almost, you can't split it down the middle, but it's basically 50-50 male, female.
Okay.
I have the first ever, the highest ranking Black African-American male chief deputy in the agency, which he got a letter from somebody, and so he's in the courtroom, he's doing this work.
Yep.
He got a letter from somebody that he sent, ended up advocating that they go to prison. And it was another young Black man, and he wrote a letter to him about how meaningful it was that his prosecutor was a Black man. And he was like, you know what, I can respect it, and I respect you. And it just hit home for me how meaningful representation is in the work, not only to my staff, but to the community and to people getting a sense of justice being served, even when they're the ones that are being held accountable. So I'm so proud to have a much more diverse executive team helping me run the agency. All of the decisions aren't being held at the attorney level. They're being spread across all of my managers and directors at the executive level. So that is first and foremost.
Yeah.
We've been tracking promotions.
Yes.
Most of my agency is actually female. When you do the 260 people, I think it's about 60% female, 40% male. Okay. So of course, most of the promotions in the agency are female because they just have the numbers. When you look at the attorneys, just the attorneys, which is 96 today is our subset of attorneys out of the 260 people. Okay. Our promotions are roughly 50-50 in terms of male-female. Okay. So we're taking those things into consideration. We're taking into consideration our leadership positions that are available. We want to have a representative workforce that is bringing all kinds of different perspectives. I think that's when you take over, you see a lot of people at the top who had the most longevity in the agency were men. Yeah. And so, and a lot of the younger people actually in the lower level leadership positions ready to come up behind them have been women. So you have this striation in the workforce. So when I first got started, some of the initial promotions were of men who had by far a lot of experience in the agency. Since then, we've seen the majority of our promotional leadership positions have been women because that is the next generation that is ready to come over and take those reins. So now we're in a place where when you don't just look at a snapshot of 6 months and say, oh, look at the promotional decisions made in 6 months, you look at it over the course of my first term and you see that the promotional decisions being made are widely reflective of the staff and the community we have.
These 3 discriminatory complaints had to have impacted the morale of the workplace. What are you doing to get it back on track?
Yeah, no doubt, they do. They do impact the morale of the workplace. We've done some surveys with the equity work, and that helps us really hone in on, who is impacted and in what ways and what can we do. So that kind of helps give us a roadmap of where we can go to work on some of these issues. Yep, where are the hot spots? How can we work with them? Morale in the agency has been a challenge pretty much across everybody because of the workload and the conditions over the last 3 years. So we try to find things that we can do, bringing food into the agency. We partnered with Dove Lewis. They bring dogs into the agency so that they can walk around and people can pet a dog on Thursdays. Obviously we're government, right? There's not a huge budget for morale boosting. Yeah. So you try to find the areas and things, but what I'm most proud of is that I don't have the answers. I'm not the guy who knows how to fix this. My staff are.
Right.
They are the ones who can tell me, hey, have you thought about this? Have you tried this? And so we have policy committees throughout the agency that empower people at every level of the agency. From the newest people, they can join a policy committee, to the most experienced. And they all collaboratively come to me with suggestions of things that we can do. And I think that's how we're going to continue to
build it back.
Around.
Yeah. Hey, I could talk to you all day, man, for real, because I love the topic, and I think the community is really waiting with bated breath to figure out how we're going to turn the page, turn the corner, and get things back to a place where people feel safe, but also where people are not overly criminalized. And so I want to thank you for coming. I want you to have the final words to take us out, to close us out. Tell people what you want them to know about you or what you want to say.
You know, I think this election is so important because people are frustrated and people don't feel safe right now. And opportunistically, there are people trying to take advantage of that in our community. And they want to take us back to the way things were. And they want to make you believe that your safety is at risk because of decisions being made. But as you heard here today, the STEP Court program, lower recidivism rate, we can hold people accountable and get better results. And I think that is the key to going forward. We don't need to expand our prison system or do all these things. We need to hold people accountable and get them connected to the resources and the things that they need to be successful. I'm seeing a lot of improvement across our city right now, and it gives me hope. We have a lot of work to do to continue on this trajectory, but I think we're getting together, we're working together in unprecedented ways, and we're starting to see the impact of that in some of our crime stats and rates. And I want to work with the community to build what the sense of safety is. What does public safety mean to the community members? That's what we're going to do to make Multnomah County feel safe again.
You want for 4 more years?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Right on. All right, well, hey, I want to thank DA Michael Schmidt for coming and joining us today, also known as Mike. We asked some hard questions. If you have additional questions, jump in the chat. I'll get those questions over to him. If you got things that I should have asked and I didn't have all day, gang. I didn't have all day, but put those questions in there and we'll get them over to you and see if we can get them answered, all right? So thanks for joining us. Jump in the chat and we'll have the link to some of the resources he referenced in the intro. Thank you.